Hey everyone, hope you're doing well and welcome back to the channel. So today should hopefully be a quick video. I wanted to answer the question of whether or not I would recommend Heva Clinic for you if you are considering getting a hair transplant done. And first of all, thank you so much for all of the questions and comments you are all leaving under my videos. I'm here to help essentially. And I think this was quite an interesting question actually, because a lot of you can see the results that I have for my hair transplant. My hair's a bit messy at the moment, but yeah, you can see my edges. There is definitely hair there, and this is of course, well not of course, but this is definitely way more hair that I've got here compared to when prior to my hair transplant. So this is a massive difference. I haven't brushed my hair out, so it may look a bit picky, but yeah, this is a massive difference. And although I complain a lot, I'm so grateful that my edges look like this, like so grateful to God, honestly. I know we've been talking about my donut area and, you know, not feeling entirely happy about that. And I guess just in case you are new or newish to my channel, not all of you have actually watched my all the videos in this hair transplant playlist or journey. So just in case you're not aware, when I got my quote from Heva, they told me that the quote was for 2,500 grafts to 2,700 grafts. So that's how many grafts they quoted me when they gave me the quote. When I got there on the morning of the surgery, the lady looked at my hair and she looked all around, and she said that they're going to try their best to give me from 2,700 to 3,000 grafts. So she was acting like, you know, they're not too sure. They're not sure if it's possible, but they're going to try their utmost best to take around 3,000 grafts and, you know, use that for the hair transplant. So me going into the surgery, I was like mentally in my head praying to God, like, please let them be able to take 3,000 grafts, because I was aware my edges did not look great. They were bald. So yeah, I was just really hoping that they were able to go to the upper part of that quote and just make my edges look really good basically. So the plan going into the surgery was to get roughly 2,500 grafts to 3,000 grafts if that was possible. So of course it was a huge shock for me when they had finished the surgery, when the man came into the room and he said, we've been able to do 4,000 grafts. Yeah, that was a huge shock. It wasn't the plan. I was awake during many parts of the transplant process, so they could have told me if and when the plan changed, if and when they were considering taking more grafts than they had consulted me about. They could have told me, just checked if I felt comfortable, you know, checked my thoughts, etc., but they didn't. So I was terribly upset when he told me that they took 4,000 grafts. I've gone over this in previous videos, so I may just leave it here and not go any more into the detail, but I felt, I really wished they had consulted me, because if they had consulted me, I wouldn't have agreed to 4,000 grafts being taken. Now, some of you may be like, well, Rachel, your hair looks great, so it's a good thing they took 4,000 grafts. It's subjective, but we're going to leave it there. So I guess, although I definitely recommend Heva Clinic overall, that probably was the only negative, or that certainly was the only negative part of my experience with them. The fact that they made a decision and they didn't consult me, they didn't check if I was okay with it. They had like ample chances to just check, but they didn't. I don't really know why. So I felt like the communication wasn't great in that respect. and that kind of, it didn't spoil my experience with them, but that definitely put a damper, that dampened the experience for sure. That being said though, that is the only negative, well, it's not the only negative thing I can say actually about Heva Clinic. That was probably the biggest negative thing in terms of my experience with them. I guess some other things that, and these are very minor things to be honest, and that's why I didn't really mention them in my previous videos, but if I'm forced to try and come up with negative things that I didn't like about my experience with Heva, I could probably pinpoint the fact that my translator wasn't around like 24/7 all the time. I don't really know if it's reasonable for us to expect to have our translator in the room for the entire day. I don't know, but it would have been nice if she was there. But I think it seemed like they only had one translator for the entire clinic, so she was going around to different people's rooms, etc. And there was a lot of the day where she wasn't there. So yeah, maybe that thing with the 4,000 grafts being taken from my head, maybe that wouldn't have happened if she was in my room, but I'm gonna leave that there. Another thing that I guess thought about on the day was the fact that they didn't seem to know my name. So I'm talking about the technicians who are actually doing my hair, and actually the lady who drew my hairline. So the lady who looked at my hair, drew the hairline, and told the technicians how many grafts to take. This happened at the beginning of the day, in the morning. None of those people knew my name. The only people at Heva Clinic who knew my name, or the only person who knew my name, was the lady who I paid the money to. So the lady taking my money, she knew my name, and yeah, that was it really. Everyone else, they had to ask me what my name was. And I don't know, obviously when you, well not obviously, but when you go to have a surgery abroad, I've now realised that it's unrealistic for us to expect completely the same standards as we would get if you had your surgery in the UK or in the US or somewhere else, you know. But when you go abroad, I guess we need to reduce our expectations, our standards a little bit, because I'm used to, like, if we're having surgery or a major surgery, usually the doctor worked on you, they know your name. I just found it quite interesting and a bit surprising that no one seemed to know my name, and they were always asking like, oh, what's your name, what's your name? So that was quite interesting, and I guess it bothered me a little bit, because I was thinking, well, what if I had like a health condition and I didn't have my personal details on like a flip pad or notepad or, you know, clipboard or something? I was thinking, like, what if I had like allergies or a health condition, or I had told them something specific for them to bear in mind prior to the surgery? You know, that information, it seemed like they wouldn't have it to hand because they didn't know who they were working on. It felt like they treated all of their patients the same, even though they treated all of us well, I must say, but it just seemed like they wouldn't have any specific information individual to me, because they didn't know my name, they didn't have any personal details. So I found that kind of interesting. And I guess related to that as well, one thing that I was a tiny bit surprised about as well was prior to my surgery. So when I was communicating with them on WhatsApp, so, you know, asking them how much the transplant would be, trying to arrange dates, etc., they didn't ask me if I had any like prior or pre-existing health conditions, not to my recollection anyway. I didn't fill out any forms, so like the usual forms you would fill out when you are perhaps booking a surgery or when you're about to have surgery. I didn't fill out any forms even while I was in Turkey, you know, when I got to the clinic. So that was quite interesting. They didn't take any information about my medical history. They didn't asked me like the reason for my hair loss. I found that quite interesting, and I'm not saying that clinics need to do this. It was just things that I was expecting for some reason. They just didn't do it. So these things just stood out to me a little bit. They didn't ask me if I had any like what the reason was for my hair loss, whether it was due to traction alopecia or due to genetic baldness, or whether it was due to like hormone imbalances, endometriosis, or they didn't ask me any like what was the reason for my hair loss. And I think that's quite interesting because I'm not an expert in this, but I would have thought that the reason for someone's hair loss is quite important in terms of whether their transplant will be successful long term. So if you're experiencing hereditary female pattern baldness or even male pattern baldness, I personally would think that will determine how successful the hair transplant is, because you would continue to lose hair. But again, I'm not an expert. I'm just gonna leave them to make their decisions. But I was just surprised that they didn't ask me for the source or the cause of my baldness, of my hair loss. So neither did Longevita, by the way. When I reached out to Longevita, I got all the way to the point of them giving me my quote and sending me the payment, the way to make my payment. They didn't ask me any of this information either. So this may just be something that clinics in Turkey fail to do in general, or maybe it just so happens to be those two clinics that I reached out to that asked me these questions, or that didn't ask me these questions. I did reach out to quite a few clinics in the UK, as I mentioned in one video previously, but I didn't really get as far as seeing whether they asked these questions or not. So those are a few things that I was just expecting, but I didn't get from Heva, but also I didn't get from Longevita. When I think about it, didn't get them from either. What else was I expecting from Heva that I didn't get, or that I wasn't entirely happy with? I guess to reiterate, I did have a very positive experience. I was very, very impressed with their professionalism, with the amount of communication that I did receive prior to booking the surgery, and then, all the information that they sent me when I reached Turkey, just to ensure that I knew where I was going and where to meet my transfers, and the time that I needed to be downstairs in the hotel for the transfer to pick me up, etc. They were very, very clear and very good in their communications. It just seemed like the communication about how many grafts they had decided to take out from my head, that seemed to go out of the window. But that doesn't happen to everyone, so I guess it was just a mishap, hopefully a one-off. That won't happen to you. But let me just have a think if there was anything else. Those may be the main things that I can think about in terms of the things that I weren't too happy about my experience with Heva. Those things are minor, as I said, and they don't cloud my overall experience with them. Overall, I was extremely impressed. I felt like I was treated like I was paying way more money than I paid for the hair transplant. They treat you like not a celebrity, but they treat you like amazingly. They really look after you. And even though, your technicians don't speak English, but they still check if you're okay. When you're in pain, they still ask you, like, pain, you can still, they care about you. They care about you for sure. And even people that I spoke to that communicated with me after my transplant, there was Oliver, there were a couple people. Benita was really, really helpful. Oliver was really helpful as well. There was someone else that I texted when I was in the hotel after the surgery. That was helpful. They've got a really helpful team, really helpful. So overall, I'm now 15 minutes in. I thought this video would be quick, but overall, I am extremely happy that I used Heva. I do not regret using them at all, even though they took more follicles than they told me initially. Overall, I loved my experience with them. They put me in a great hotel that made the trip very pleasant as well. They communicated well whilst I was there, after, before I went there, whilst I was there. Their communication after I left Turkey kind of like dissolved, like diminished. They did say, well, actually, what was supposed to happen was when they were explaining the aftercare instructions to me, they instructed me to send them photographs of my head every few days for them to like just make sure things were recovering according to plan. But I forgot to send my photos to them. I thought that they were gonna like WhatsApp me to check how I was doing. So I ended up having no aftercare care whatsoever. But I appreciate now that that is my fault. I misremembered their instructions. I should have been sending them my photos. But on the other hand, they could have also reached out to me, and you know, they could have realised that, hang on a minute, we've heard from every patient apart from Rachel, so let's reach out to her and see if she's okay. But no one did that. So I felt like my aftercare was lacking because literally no one reached out to me. I did end up WhatsApping them, I think once or twice, with like some random questions, and they did respond in a very timely manner to those. But apart from that, no one reached out to me. No one even asked me to send them photographs of my head or the donor area, nothing. So yeah, there are some things that they can improve on, or that they could have improved on. And I left a very honest Google review as well. But yeah, overall, those things, they don't cloud my entire experience with them. Overall, I am extremely happy that I used Heva. I would recommend them despite the whole thing with my number of grafts, despite the lack of aftercare, despite the small like things about no form, them not knowing my name, them not asking about pre-existing medical conditions or the reason for my baldness, etc. So yeah, they are really professional. They definitely think about the entire service that they're delivering, and they try and go above and beyond. Yeah, it was a brilliant experience. I'm so happy that I did this, and I'm genuinely so happy that I used Heva. So happy. So yeah, that in a nutshell is my answer to the question of whether or not I would recommend Heva. I definitely would. Probably 9 out of 10. It would have been a 10 out of 10 if they had just stuck to the same number of grafts that we agreed in the beginning, but I'm going to put that aside. So 9 out of 10 recommendation from me. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful for you. If you haven't watched the rest of the videos in this hair transplant playlist or journey, I'll leave the link to the playlist as a pinned comment below so you can catch up. Leave any comments or questions you have down below, and I will speak to you in my next video. Take care.